Salutations, respected viewers. It's George from Ireland once more. In this video, I'm going to explain why Hillary Clinton will never be the President of the United States, and indeed why that is something to be welcomed. So we all know that she was the first major party candidate to be a woman, and she lost. And it seems that in these days you have one shot at it. The last person I can think of who had two attempts to become president was Adlai Stevenson way back in the 50s. Indeed, even sought the Democratic nomination a third time. Do not reject this man. You may have heard of the renowned speech. George H.W. Bush, he lost to Clinton in '92, and he didn't seek the Republican nomination again. See, Dan Quayle lost with George Bush Sr. He mused about going for the Republican nomination, but again, he didn't do it. He was seen as so stupid he couldn't spell a potato. Back then, stupidity was considered a disadvantage. Now it's not. Anyway, someone who came close to going for a second time, well, Walter Mondale had been vice president under Jimmy Carter. He then was the Democrats' presidential candidate in '84, but lost. But it seems to me these days, if you're rejected by the electorate, you don't get a second shot. And many Democrats are ruining the fact that Bernie Sanders didn't get the nomination. They think if he had been their candidate, that would have galvanized millennials and got them over the line. So Hillary Clinton, she had a golden opportunity. There was incumbency. There was basically peace, some small-scale fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq. There was prosperity, and she managed to lose to an ogre like Trump. She had huge negatives. Now, we know she got more of the popular vote than her opponent. Well, that wasn't quite enough. So she's extraordinarily dishonest. And I'll come on to why she's not quite as loathsome as Trump. And I'd forgotten some of these scandals of the 90s, but it's just endless. All these Department of Justice reports on her mendacity, her evasions. Her brother received $1 million loan from Mark Rich, fugitive from justice. And then Mrs. Clinton's husband then pardoned Mark Rich, who came back to the United States. Was there some sort of secret deal done? We don't know, but it certainly doesn't look good. And then Mark Rich's ex-wife made huge donations to Hillary's political war chest. Another thing people pointed out about her is she was quite a feminist in the 70s. Look at how she dressed during the Watergate hearings. And she was Hillary Rodham Clinton because that was second-wave feminism. Then she realized that put off the average woman who thought that was a bit too feminist. She became plain Hillary Clinton in the 90s. But you can't trust someone who can't tell the truth about their own name or make up her mind. She's dropped the Rodham. It didn't come back when she was seeking the presidency this time. So the one sweetener of Trump winning is imagining the look on Hillary Clinton's face when she realized that she'd lost. Her bubble was burst. The reasons why she was better than Donald Trump is that she is rational. She knows when she is lying. Trump cannot distinguish fact from fantasy. Hillary is predictable. She has emotional self-control. She is mature. She's been a senator, been Secretary of State. So there's plenty of foreign policy experience. Obviously been First Lady before that. She's eloquent, presentable, and she's not grossly insulting to people. So, I mean, she's a lawyer who graduated from Yale, for goodness sake. Look at Trump. He went to, was it Wharton Business School? And look what a dum-dum he is, who can scarcely string a sentence together. So did he get a degree that he didn't deserve because his father was a multimillionaire? It doesn't seem unlikely. So Hillary Clinton, yes, she would have been better than him. But look at all the dreadful things she's done. She's an ultra-Zionist. Now, Israel has the right to exist, as does Palestine. And so in Congress and as Secretary of State, she's constantly spoken up for Israel's illegal occupation of Palestine. It was voted to be illegal by the UN in 1967. There have been cases in the International Court of Justice in The Hague against what Israel's doing. The woman is a lawyer. She knows what's what, and she will constantly speak up for this. She's voted for funding to go to the Israeli military, knowing that the Israeli military has killed thousands of Palestinian civilians. You think of those 2009 attacks, when 100 times more Palestinian civilians were killed than Israelis. Think of that, 100 times more. Talk about grossly disproportionate. And I know there are some mitigating factors, such as the Palestinian militants were amongst the civilian population. And I know the Israelis did do some decent things, the knock on the roof to warn civilians. But nevertheless, the use of force was grossly disproportionate, and she's constantly given diplomatic cover to this. She's been a cheerleader for such bestial attacks on the civil population of Israel. Bernie Sanders, who is himself Jewish, was morally courageous enough to say that the Israeli military response was over the top. But Mrs. Clinton wouldn't do that because she's an ultra hawk. All her belief in human rights suddenly stops when it happens to be her dear friends in Israel who are committing these abuses. And I know that Palestinian fighters have sometimes deliberately killed Israeli civilians, which is equally detestable. So Mrs. Clinton, I suppose she believes what she says. She just switches off her moral conscience when it comes to one country. Any crime against humanity is entirely acceptable, according to her, if it's committed by her allies. So that's one of my other problems with her. I certainly have beef with her. So she won't go for it again. She's 71 already, and a lot of Democrats are deeply disappointed that she managed to blow it. So that's that. I'm glad we have at least seen the back of the Clintons. She was a much better option than Donald Trump. I think the United States is such a gigantic country with so many intelligent people, people who are very ethical, morally upstanding, affable, and all the rest of it. How is it came down to a choice between these two? And how is it a nation of 320 million could choose the most dishonest, despicable, vile, criminal, selfish, cruel, vulgar person to utterly disgrace the country? It's as though the nation's vices have been embodied in one man. He is just egotism incarnate, Donald Trump. And the contrast with Obama, who was so dignified and so intellectual, couldn't be greater. Anyway, please God that Trump will drag down the Republicans and they'll lose the midterms. Though I don't bet on it, and that he'll serve only one term. Though I'm not forecasting that yet, that he will fail to be re-elected.